Hi, everybody. Welcome back to TSSA Talks. We are here live at the Exit Inn, famous rock venue here in Nashville, Tennessee, for a partnership with the Exit Inn and Tennessee State Soccer Association. As part of TSSA Talks, we're really excited to have a series of interviews, and today we're interviewing Hans Hobson, our Executive Director at Tennessee State Soccer Association. Hans, in part one of our interview, we talked about sort of your journey, how you found soccer and how soccer became a real passion of yours. And we got all the way through the time where you had been coaching in college and you made the decision that your talents were best suited and you could best sort of meet your mission, your personal mission as a youth soccer coach. And so you'd moved to Knoxville, Tennessee. Tell us about that change now. All of a sudden, you're a young man in a new town, kind of a new state, because you're kind of in the Tri-Cities area before that. So now all of a sudden you're in Tennessee, in Knoxville. Tell us how that transition into your new line of work happened.
Yeah, no, it was different. It was different going from sleeping in a dorm room. I mean, I was sleeping in dorm rooms for 1 year of my life at Milligan College, and then having an apartment now, and it's just me and my golden retriever, Pele, or Ramos. Ramos was his name. I had another one named Pele, but Ramos, and just enjoying my craft. So I'm going to coaching schools. So at that time, I was taking the United Soccer Coaches coaching licenses. I had taken the national and then the advanced and then the premier, and just growing as a coach, trying to improve myself and being immersed in an environment where I'm working with speed, agility, and quickness. I had 2 teams that I was coaching and traveling every weekend. So I didn't have time for anything but soccer. So it was a really cool time in my life where everything about what I was doing, watching soccer, growing as a coach and a person, and really kind of sharpening my sword, figuring out what didn't work. Because let's be honest, there's many times that we're out there and it's like, this did not go the way I wanted it to. Or, man, I said that to that kid and that wasn't the reaction that I wanted, I'm trying to motivate them. And so we're reading different books and going to different places. So it was an incredible time in my life where, as a coach, I got to be a sponge and just soak up and watch sessions. And I got involved with ODP. I think that's where we originally met.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and I think ODP is one of the things. I'm glad that was a part. I mean, appreciate you sharing that as a part of your journey. Definitely has been a part of mine, continues to be. I think one of the things that I've found about it has been the colleagues are really what makes it. We want to work with talented players. That's something I think all coaches want, is talented players. Some people, and I really respect the people who are really down at the grassroots of the grassroots level, who take the kids who just want to play and be introduced to the game. I'm not that kind of patient, and I have a ton of respect for those that are. But for me, it's always been, I love working with talented kids, but the thing that I loved about ODP, and when I think back to Knoxville at that time, because I had graduated from Maryville College not too long before that, and so I kind of knew a little bit about that scene, is there were a lot of people to lean on, a lot of people to be around, that as you wanted to sharpen that sword, it wasn't as though you had to go and learn how to do it for the first time. There were people to lean on. I think of some of the guys I knew from back in that area, that era then, there's, from Pepe Fernandez at Maryville, from John Snyder, who you mentioned that you worked with, from Derek Green that I know you worked with, one of our former staff members that you worked with at Carson Newman. Who were some of the people that really shaped you, and how did you take that to really make a career out of? We didn't grow up seeing professional soccer coaches, not coaches who coach professional soccer, but people whose profession was to coach soccer. That wasn't something that existed. We were almost sort of inventing something out of thin air.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. I mean, from Milligan College, Marty Shirley and John Garvilla were key in my development and pushing me to go outside my comfort zone. I mean, let's be honest. I remember the first coaching course I went to, and I'm scared to death. I'm like, you're in front of your peers, and how do you make this work? And it was like, you jump out there, you fake it till you make it. And that's really what I did, and realized, wow, I'm actually pretty good at this. And so those 2 guys were instrumental. But then I met Derek Green, and he was at Carson Newman, and I thought I wanted to be a college coach like him, and it's actually what led me in a different direction. So Derek Green, John Snyder, about that time, I actually moved on to a different club in the Knoxville area, KFC, and Gary Henley. Gary Henley was a former pro coach for the Cleveland Crunch, and did a lot of professional stuff. And Gary had a heart attack, a stroke, and ended up in Knoxville. And just to be around this guy and how he did stuff, it wasn't the way that I would have always done stuff, but I really tried to put myself around people and go, okay, what nugget of knowledge can I get from this person or that person? But Knoxville ended up being a great place for me. Ange Kelly, who was at the University of Tennessee at the time, and developing that Lady Vols program, I was involved with that, and I got to see those girls train on a daily basis, and trained with them in the summer. And so being around players there too, Lisa Tipton, Tori Beeler, a lot of these players that you coached, I think, in and around ODP. These are players that I saw growing up. And from a female perspective, even, I'm coaching females at the time, and they're challenging me and saying, hey, look, have you thought about this? To where I'm now, as a male coach coaching females, I need to have a female on staff. So thinking about different things and having people around you, like you said, that group of people that can challenge you and make you better. And so that was that environment. It was great.
Well, that's great. And I think one of the things that I want people to really think about outside when they come in and hear these stories is there's not just one path. We were all plotting a path. We didn't know what it looked like on the other side. And if we could now, I'd like to transition from, when you made the decision to leave coaching as much, and there was a couple of paths along here before we get there, but you ultimately have transitioned to a place where you're not coaching as much as you were back in the day. I felt like for coaching, it was a loss when we lost you from on the field as much, especially with the girls. You were a good coach with boys as well, but you really had a way of communicating effectively. They could feel the empathy. They could feel, I believe, from talking to players who played for you, they knew that you cared. And so it was a real loss for us when you stepped off the field as much. But I think it's important everybody understands there's a lot of different ways to take this journey as a professional in soccer. So you meet your wife, ultimately. She's not your wife yet while you're in Knoxville, but then your soccer journey takes you to the Middle Tennessee area, where you come here to be the director of a club, a club that has a DOC for the first time as a full-time professional, and you begin a journey, and it takes you now to family and to the quality of life questions a lot of us have to ask that ultimately leads you to a role here at Tennessee State Soccer Association. So as we wrap up part 2, can you kind of tell us about that journey of now leaving Knoxville, which had become a comfort area, coming to a new place, building a club, mergers, all those things that go into it, and how that ultimately led you to choose to step off the field but still serving the game?
Yeah, no, that's a big question. And I appreciate what you said. I always felt as a coach too, I wanted a touch base on this, is I was a girls coach. I related to them. I felt like girls were psychologically being able to connect with them. And boy, I can show them I hit it up or 90. They're gonna, oh, coach, teach me. But the girls were tougher to get. You build a team and a culture, and I was always about that. And I think that leads me, I can say that's the end result over here of your question. But building that team, building that culture was always important to me, and letting them understand what's the goal? How do we get to that goal? And I always felt like I strive to do that. And so one of the things in Knoxville that I felt, not that I knew everything, but I reached a point where I wasn't surrounded by the people that were helping me to grow anymore. Mm-hmm. And so with that, I'm like, what can I do? What can I do? And some of the ideas that I was bringing forward, the people that were around weren't willing to embrace. And it's no knock on them. It's just, that was my perspective. That was my feeling at the time. And so I started looking for other jobs, and there happened to be a position open at Brentwood Soccer Club at the time. It was a year in advance that somebody had told me about that possibility. And so I waited, and I had applied, and it took a while. In that time, I got engaged, and my wife and I, Erin, we ended up moving to Knoxville, to Nashville, where I took the job as the first director of coaching for Brentwood Soccer Club. And it was really interesting because it was a clean canvas. It was an opportunity for me then to come in and create something and a culture just like before. And looking back at it, it's like, that's kind of been my life. It's like, okay, the coaching thing and the soccer thing has just continued to develop. And so here I am, not really coaching a team, but I'm coaching coaches. How do I make these coaches and this culture and this club something that's next level? And so we really focused on that, on getting together once a month and having coaching education sessions that were outside, because I had felt previously, again, no knock on anybody else, there were a bunch of little islands where everybody did their own individual thing. And what we wanted to do at Brentwood was make it so that it wasn't a bunch of individual islands. We're going to try and see if we can find a style that suits us. I don't know that we really got to that. We talked about that, and we talked about things in terms of development at certain ages that we felt were going to be appropriate. We hired people in certain positions to kind of help with that. And we were out on the fields all the time, and I think that what's led me to my transition to where I'm at today, because Brentwood merged with TNFC, formed what is now TSC, and I was basically doing a job from about 11 o'clock until 10 o'clock at night. I was out there on the fields, and you reach a point where you come home, and my wife is sitting there. She's holding 3 little boys, and like, when's it gonna end? And it kind of hit me in the face. It's like, whoa, it's not about me. It's about them, and what can I do to still maybe stay in something that I love, and still give back to the game that I love too. Something that has shaped. I tell people all the time, soccer's given me more than I'll ever be able to give it back. And so about that time, answered prayer came along. Somebody from the state office came to me and just said, look, would you be interested in this position as executive director? And it's like, wow, to be able to influence this game at a higher level, to be able to create a culture in the state office that could affect how soccer is in Tennessee. Our coaches, our referees, our players, and I think that's really what I still strive for in the job that I'm in right now. We're not perfect, we're not. And I've learned that from my teams. My teams weren't perfect. I wasn't the perfect coach. I'm not the perfect boss right now, but I still get up each and every day and I look at our mission to make a difference, to lead, to serve, to inspire. And that's what we're trying to do each and every day. So I think we're trying to create, that culture, our core values, and even what we're doing right now. This is a step in that direction to improve what's going on in the state of Tennessee.
Yeah, I think that's great. So what we've been able to now cover sort of here in part 2 is that journey from I'm still a competitive player and I'm maybe deciding to end those days to now I'm a coach, I'm a full-time coach, and now you've been able to transition into where you're an administrator. So I want to leave you with this as we finish up part 2. We're going to come back for part 3. And there, I'd like for you to share with us what you see coming. We've had an unprecedented last 7 months here in the world, in America, in Tennessee, in Nashville. It's unprecedented what we've gone through. And there have been a lot of challenges and a lot of things we've learned about ourselves, we've learned about our organizations. So in the context of your entire professional career and now your journey as our executive director for now how many years?
9
years in. So almost a decade in this role. I think you're uniquely positioned to try and help us to see what you would hope and dream for, not necessarily what we're on a path towards right now, but what could that path be? So when we come back for part 3 with Hans Hobson, we'll be talking about the future of soccer here in Tennessee and across our country. Come back and see us at TSSA Talks.